Hi. In our last video, we left off with a really basic example of a Qt GUI program. We had our special main that had the command line arguments argc and argv. We used those to make a Q application, and then in the end, we executed that application. In the middle, though, we made a button and we made it visible. We gave it some text, and this is what it looks like. So there's our button. Doesn't do anything yet. In a couple of videos, we'll make our items actually do something. But for right now, we're going to look at how to use different types of elements. So first, let's look what happens if we make another push button. Alright, so now we've made two buttons. I gave them both labels, and you can see the two different ways that we can give a label. We can either use the default constructor with no arguments and then later use the set text function, or we can give it that button its text as we create it. So what happens? Alright, what we have here, you can't see it right away, but if we move this, we can see we actually have two buttons. We have they're created and they each get their own window. So we'll look at how to put them in the same window in a little bit, but however many buttons or other types of components you make in this way, each one of them will get their own window. So let's look at a different type of component, a Q label. So Q label is just a place to display text. And I'm going to give that label some text, the set text function. Alright, so here's our label. You can see it's not anything that you can press or do anything with. It's just a place to display some text, and it has the text that we gave it. And then here's our two buttons. Each one of them gets its own window. By the way, when does the app stop executing? We had three windows, now we only have two. But when we close the last item, that's when this app will stop executing and we get to the end of the program. Alright, so I just want to show some examples of different types of widgets that we can use, and then we'll look at how to put them all together into one window. Here's another kind. It's called a Q line entry, or line edit, sorry. Alright, so now here's the line edit, and you can actually type something in the box here. So it's just a text box that you can type into. Then here's our label that we can't do anything with, but it displays text, and then two buttons. And maybe one other type of thing. So a line edit has just one line that you can type text into. A text edit, it has more than one line. Alright, same thing as the line edit, but you can start to see how you can maybe start to build your own text editor with some of these components if you could just get them into the same window. Alright, so let's close all of these up. Alright, and I'm going to go back to just having my two buttons. Alright, so here's one more type of widget that I want to show you. It's called a Q widget. Now, in the inheritance hierarchy, all of these other things that we looked at, all these other widgets rather, the push button, label, line edit, text edit, they are all descendants from Q widget. So Q widget is the most general type of widget. Let's look at what we get when we show one of those. All right. So there's our buttons. Here's the widget. So you can see the widget has nothing in it. But what our job is going to be in a little bit is to put these smaller widgets into the big widget that represents a window. So here I'm going to, well, first I'm going to close that widget. I'm going to move our widget up here so that we declare that first, and then I'm going to start to put these buttons inside of the widget. So alright, so here's one other thing that we need to know about before we can start putting these widgets into the bigger widget. We have these things called layout managers. If we just put both of these buttons into the widget, they'd go right on top of each other. But what we need instead is a layout manager so that we can put it like order them from top to bottom or from left to right. So we have two types of layout managers that we're going to be looking at. A QVBox layout, which is a vertical layout, and QHbox layout, which is horizontal. Alright, so let's take a look at what we can do with this. So we're going to first make a layout, QVBox layout, and then we're going to put the buttons in that layout. So we say layout.add widget, and then we tell it what widget we want. So if you try to do this, you'll actually get a compile error because it doesn't want to get an actual object. It wants to get a pointer to that object. So button 1 isn't a pointer. How can we get an address that we can pass to the add widget function? Well, we can put the ampersand sign in front, and that'll give us the address of button 1. Right, if we want to add button 2 to it, then we say layout.add widget. Okay, so now we have a layout, a vertical layout that has button 1 and button 2. We need to put that layout in the widget so that button 1 and button 2 will be vertically laid out inside of the bigger widget. So widget.setLayout, and then we tell it the name of the layout. Again, we can't just give it the object name. We'll give it the address of the object or a pointer to that object. Alright, so we'll look at this code again in a second, but let's see what it does. Alright, so now we have this widget, and it has both of our buttons laid out vertically inside of it. How did we get that to happen instead of each of them having their own window like they did before? Well, we declared each of them. We made our widget. Actually, we don't even need these button show functions anymore because they're now part of a bigger widget. So we made a larger widget, which is going to be our window for this application, and then in the future I'll call it window instead of widget. Then we made our buttons that are going to be inside that window. We made a layout manager. We called it we made a vertical layout manager, a QVBox layout, and that layout manager we added the two buttons so that they're stacked vertically, and then we set that layout in the widget. Remember that each time that we did that, we couldn't give just the object names. We had to give the address or a pointer to that object. and we'll deal more with that in a later video. But for right now, that gives us our GUI program with 2 buttons. You could do the same thing with labels or text entries. So just as one last example in this video, here's Q line entry or line edit. Let's add it to the layout. And that layout gets added to the widget. Let's see how this turns out. Alright, so now we have 3 things vertically stacked. Button 1, button 2, and our line entry. Alright, so we'll do more with this in future videos, but now we have built a little bit more on our GUI using the Qt library. See you next time.